My parents dumped my 8-year-old daughter with a foster family while they jetted off to Hawaii with my sister's kids. The note read, "Sorry, honey. We couldn't handle her." I didn't scream, I filed a complaint. The next morning, there was pounding on their hotel door. Sarah's hand shook as she read that stupid note for what felt like the 100th time. The fluorescent lights in the CPS office made everything look sickly green, like some twisted medical drama. "Sorry, honey, we couldn't handle her." 8 words that basically said her daughter was disposable. Emma sat there swinging her skinny legs from that awful plastic chair, humming some song from a cartoon she'd watched last week. Kid had no clue her own grandparents had just, what do you even call it? Dumped her? Like she was a broken refrigerator they couldn't be bothered fixing. The social worker, this tired-looking woman with coffee stains on her blouse, and kept glancing between them, with those eyes that said she'd seen this mess before, too many times. Sarah's phone kept buzzing with Jessica's Instagram posts from Waikiki Beach, perfect sunset shots with her perfect kids building perfect sandcastles. Posted 23 minutes after Emma got dropped off with complete strangers. The anger didn't hit like lightning, more like water slowly filling up a bathtub until it overflows. Sarah had been working these insane double shifts at Northwestern Memorial for 6 months straight, saving every penny for this medical conference in Chicago. She'd trusted her parents with Emma because they were her parents. They'd seemed thrilled when Jessica mentioned visiting from Denver with her 2 kids. "Oh, it'll be such fun having all the grandchildren together." Her mom had gushed over the phone. "Yeah, right. Fun for everyone except Emma, apparently." Sarah should have known something was off when they stopped picking up her calls Wednesday. She'd figured they were just busy with 3 kids running around. Instead, they'd decided Emma was too much work and literally handed her over to the state like she was returning a library book. The social worker was explaining temporary custody procedures, but Sarah's brain was already calculating flight times to Hawaii and wondering if her parents had any idea what kind of storm was heading their way. "Mommy, how come Grandma and Grandpa didn't want to keep me?" Emma's voice cut through everything like a rusty knife. Sarah felt something crack right down the middle of her chest. She dropped to her knees and pulled Emma close, breathing in that familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo, the expensive kind Emma had begged for at Target last month. Emma had been so excited about this sleepover, babbling for weeks about all the movies they'd watch and cookies they'd bake. Now she sat in this sterile government building, clutching some random stuffed elephant the foster family had given her, because she'd shown up with literally nothing. Her own clothes, that's it. No pajamas, no toothbrush, no Mr. Whiskers, the ratty teddy bear she'd slept with since she was 3. Sarah's parents hadn't even bothered packing a bag. They'd just dumped her and run. The social worker handed over a stack of papers thick as a phone book, temporary custody forms that felt like admitting defeat. But Sarah wasn't defeated. She was planning. The flight to Honolulu felt like it lasted about 17 years. Sarah sat in 23C, middle seat naturally, with Emma curled up like a sad little pretzel beside her. The kid had cried for the first hour until she finally fell asleep from pure exhaustion. This woman across the aisle kept giving them those sympathetic looks people give when they think you're dealing with some family tragedy. She wasn't wrong, technically. Sarah spent the whole flight hunched over her laptop, researching Hawaii's child abandonment laws until her eyes burned. What her parents did wasn't just cruel, it was potentially a felony. Child abandonment, especially when you flee the state afterward? Yeah, that looks really bad to prosecutors. Sarah had screenshots of everything. CPS reports, foster placement docs, even Jessica's stupid social media posts showing their happy family vacation that Emma got excluded from. Her colleague texted about covering her shifts. "Hope the family emergency works out okay." Sarah almost laughed. Emergency was one word for it. The Maui Grand Resort looked exactly like those fake travel brochures, all glass and fake tropical plants, with a lobby that screamed, "Your mortgage payment per night." Sarah checked in using her maiden name, specifically requesting the same floor as her parents. The desk guy, wearing one of those ridiculous flower necklaces, kept babbling about snorkeling recommendations and restaurant reservations. Sarah nodded and smiled. while mentally reviewing her legal research. Her lawyer friend back in Chicago had been very thorough about her options. Child abandonment was just the starting point. There were also custodial interference charges, potentially elder abuse if this was part of some pattern. Emma was crashed out in their adjoining room, finally sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Poor kid was running on adrenaline and confusion. Sarah had left the connecting door cracked so she'd hear if Emma had another nightmare. The little girl had been remarkably brave through all this, but Sarah could see the hurt hiding behind those big brown eyes. That was unforgivable. She pulled out her phone and sent one text to her parents. Room 1247. We need to talk. Now. Sarah started pounding on room 1245's door at exactly 7 a.m., right after she saw them take down their "Do Not Disturb" sign. She'd been camped in the hallway like some kind of deranged hotel security guard, waiting for signs of life. The pounding was rhythmic, insistent, the kind that makes your neighbors hate you. When the door finally cracked open, her mother's face went white as hotel sheets. Patricia stood there in this ridiculous tropical nightgown covered in pink flamingos, hair sticking up like she'd been electrocuted, looking like she'd seen a ghost walk through the wall. Which, in a way, she had. Sarah didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed past them into their suite, taking in the room service tray with leftover eggs, Benedict, scattered travel brochures for helicopter tours, the general vibe of people without a care in the world. Her father stumbled out of the bedroom looking guilty as hell, cycling through surprise, shame, and finally landing on that defensive expression she remembered from childhood arguments. The balcony door was open, letting in sounds of families laughing by the pool. It was almost obscene, considering what they'd done. "Where is she?" Patricia's voice came out like a mouse squeak, her eyes darting around like Emma might pop out from behind the minibar. Sarah let the question hang there, watching her parents squirm like bugs under a microscope. Her dad had enough shame to look uncomfortable, but Patricia's face was already shifting into that familiar defensive mode. "Sarah, you don't understand how difficult she was being. Jessica's children are so well behaved, and we thought maybe if we just—" Sarah held up her hand like a traffic cop. She pulled out her phone and showed them the picture from the CPS office's Emma, in that horrible plastic chair, holding a stranger's stuffed animal, eyes red and puffy from crying. "You abandoned her," Sarah said, her voice flat and cold. "You took Jessica's kids on vacation and threw my daughter away like garbage." The silence that followed was broken only by some maid's cart rattling down the hallway. Patricia reached for the hotel phone, probably to call security or something equally stupid, but Sarah yanked the cord right out of the wall. Her father finally found his voice, puffing up like some angry rooster. "Now just wait a minute, Sarah. You can't just storm in here and—" But he shut up real quick when Sarah pulled out the legal documents. The Chicago Police Department letterhead was visible right at the top, official as a heart attack. She'd filed formal abandonment charges before leaving Chicago, and the legal machine was already grinding into motion. "You have 48 hours to get back to Chicago for questioning," Sarah informed them, voice steady as a judge reading a death sentence. Charges include child abandonment, custodial interference, and child endangerment. Patricia practically collapsed onto the bed like her strings got cut, that tropical tan suddenly looking green around the edges. The ocean view didn't seem so appealing anymore. Sarah could see Jessica's kids' stuff scattered everywhere. Beach toys, snorkel masks, the evidence of a family vacation Emma should have been part of. The contrast was damning. Her father started pacing in those stupid flip-flops, making this annoying slapping sound on the tile, but he had nowhere to go in the suddenly tiny room. "You're being overdramatic," Patricia said, but her voice had zero conviction. She stared at those legal papers like they might burst into flames if she concentrated hard enough. "We didn't abandon her on some street corner. We made sure she was somewhere safe." Sarah felt that familiar rage building again, the same fury that had carried her across an entire ocean. These people had raised her, held her when she scraped her knees, promised to always be there for family. Now they were trying to justify the unjustifiable with the same tone they'd used when she was 12 and complaining about unfair bedtimes. Safe? Sarah's voice could have cut glass. "She's 8 years old and you dumped her with strangers because she was inconvenient." Kids were still laughing down by the pool, their voices drifting up like some cruel reminder of normal childhood happiness. Sarah walked over and slammed the balcony door shut, cutting off the sound. The silence felt thick and suffocating, weighted down with broken promises and shattered trust. Her father had stopped pacing and stood by the window with his shoulders hunched in defeat. The connecting door clicked open and Emma appeared, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes. Sarah hadn't wanted to leave her alone long enough to find a kid's store. Emma's face lit up for just a second when she saw her grandparents, that innocent hope that maybe this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But then reality crashed back and the light died in her eyes like someone blew out a candle. Patricia started toward her, but Sarah blocked the path, protective as a mama bear. "Grandma?" Emma's voice was so small and confused it hurt to hear. "How come you left me with those people?" "They didn't know I don't like crusts on my sandwiches." Such a simple kid thing to say, but it cut through all the adult complications and legal jargon straight to the heart of it. An 8-year-old girl had been abandoned by people she trusted, left to figure out a strange new world without any of the tiny comforts that made her feel safe. Her grandfather opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? Patricia's face crumpled like wet paper, and for about half a second, Sarah almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she remembered Emma's tears, the scared confusion in her voice when she'd asked why her grandparents didn't want her anymore. "We didn't mean for it to go this far," Patricia whispered, reaching toward Emma again like she was trying to grab smoke. "We thought maybe if we just—" Sarah cut her off with a sharp gesture. The "if" didn't matter anymore. The damage was done, trust was shattered, and Emma would carry this betrayal around like a scar for the rest of her life. Sarah scooped Emma up, feeling the solid warmth of her daughter's small body against her chest. Emma buried her face in Sarah's neck, and Sarah could feel the dampness of tears that were way too mature for an 8-year-old to cry. The legal consequences would be severe. Sarah had made damn sure of that. But the emotional wreckage was already there, and no court in the world could fix that. The family was broken, maybe beyond any hope of repair, and it had all started with a crumpled note and 8 devastating words. Jessica showed up in the doorway like some kind of tropical magazine ad, her 2 kids peeking around her legs like curious puppies. She had on this bright sundress with a flower tucked behind her ear, the whole vacation paradise look. But her expression changed fast when she took in the scene, legal papers scattered on the bed, Patricia's mascara-streaked face, their father looking like he'd been hit by a truck. "What's happening?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew perfectly well what was happening. Sarah studied her sister's face, looking for signs of guilt or complicity. Had Jessica known about the plan? Had she maybe even suggested it? The thought made Sarah's stomach turn inside out. Emma lifted her head and looked at her cousins, 2 kids who'd been deemed worthy of a Hawaiian vacation while she got shuffled off to complete strangers. The inequality was stark and brutal, visible even to a child. Jessica's kids had new swimsuits, fancy sun hats, that glow children get when they feel loved and wanted. Emma had dark circles under her eyes and a wariness that broke Sarah's heart into small pieces. "Did you know?" The question came out like an accusation, hanging in the tropical air between them. Jessica's face flushed red as a sunburn, and she quickly pushed her kids back into the hallway, closing the door behind her. The answer was written all over her guilty expression, in the way she couldn't meet Sarah's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," Jessica said, voice all defensive and whiny. "Mom and Dad said they'd find a nice babysitter, maybe someone from their church. I never thought they'd actually—" But Sarah had stopped listening. The betrayal went deeper than she'd even imagined. It wasn't just her parents who decided Emma was expendable. Her sister was in on it too. The golden child who'd always been the favorite, who'd never had to fight tooth and nail for attention and approval. Sarah felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, like a door slamming shut on relationships she'd spent 34 years trying to maintain. Emma was watching all the adults with that intense focus kids develop when their world becomes unpredictable and scary. She was learning harsh lessons about family loyalty and love with conditions attached. The hotel room had turned into a courtroom, with Sarah serving as prosecutor, judge, and jury, all rolled into one. She laid out the evidence like she was building a case for murder: CPS reports, abandonment complaints, screenshots of Jessica's social media showing the family vacation Emma had been excluded from. Her father kept trying to interrupt, his face getting redder with each failed attempt at justification. Patricia had gone completely silent, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else entirely. Jessica hovered by the door, obviously wanting to escape but unable to leave the scene of the crime. Those kids' voices from the pool kept drifting through the sealed balcony door like ghosts of happier times. Sarah remembered bringing Emma to visit just 6 months ago. How excited Emma had been to show them her art project from school. How her grandfather had lifted her up to reach the cookie jar on the high shelf. That man seemed like a complete stranger now, replaced by someone who could abandon a child for the sake of convenience and a peaceful vacation. "Chicago police are expecting you tomorrow evening," Sarah announced, gathering up her documents like she was packing evidence for trial. "There will be formal charges filed, and Child Protective Services is conducting a full investigation into your fitness as caregivers." She paused, looking at each of them in turn. "Emma and I will be on the same flight back. You can explain to the authorities why a Hawaiian vacation was more important than your granddaughter's well-being." Patricia finally looked up, her eyes all desperate and pleading. "Sarah, please. We made a terrible mistake, but we're still family. Surely we can work this out without involving the police and social services." But Sarah was already moving toward the door, Emma's small hand secure in hers. The time for family meetings and private apologies had passed the moment they walked away from Emma in that government building. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness, some wounds were too fresh for healing. The legal system would decide their fate now, and Sarah found herself oddly comforted by the cold, impersonal nature of justice. Courts didn't play favorites or make exceptions for blood relations. The flight back to Chicago was quieter than the trip out. Emma sat by the window watching clouds drift past like cotton balls, and Sarah could practically see her processing everything that had happened. Too young to understand all the implications, but old enough to know something fundamental had changed in their family forever. Sarah had spent their layover in LA on the phone with her lawyer, confirming the charges would proceed and that her parents' tropical vacation had officially become a legal nightmare. The flight attendant brought Emma extra cookies and a coloring book, small kindnesses that seemed huge after the casual cruelty they'd endured. Sarah found herself watching other families on the plane, grandparents traveling with grandchildren, parents juggling cranky toddlers and overstuffed carry-ons. Normal families doing normal things, untouched by the kind of betrayal that had blown their world apart. She wondered if Emma would ever trust adults again, if this experience would follow her into relationships for years to come. Some scars never fully fade, no matter how much time passes. Chicago's skyline appeared through the tiny airplane window, like a promise of home and safety. Sarah felt Emma's hand slip into hers as they descended, a gesture of trust that nearly broke her heart all over again. Despite everything that had happened, Emma still believed her mom could keep her safe. That faith was both a precious gift and a crushing responsibility. Sarah's phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, her lawyer, the social worker assigned to their case. The machinery of justice was grinding into motion, slow but unstoppable. Her parents would face consequences for their choices. Emma would get therapy to help heal from this trauma. But Sarah knew some scars never disappear completely, that this betrayal would leave marks on all of them forever. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and around them passengers started reaching for overhead bins and gathering their stuff. Normal people returning from normal trips, completely unaware they were witnessing the end of one family and the painful birth of another. Some endings aren't clean or dramatic. They're just sad and necessary. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the courthouse hallway watching her parents emerge from sentencing. They looked older somehow, smaller, like the weight of their choices had physically diminished them. The judge had been thorough and unsympathetic. Community service, mandatory counseling, restraining order keeping them away from Emma indefinitely. Not the harshest sentence possible, but justice of a sort. Emma was thriving at school now, making friends with the resilience only children possess. She'd thrown herself into art projects and playground games, rebuilt her world with the adaptability that amazed adults. But she never asked about her grandparents anymore, never drew pictures of big family gatherings like she used to. The therapist called it a healthy boundary, a child's instinct for self-protection. Sarah had mixed feelings about the estrangement. Part of her mourned the extended family Emma would never have, but a bigger part was fiercely protective of the peace they'd built together. Some bridges, once burned, maybe shouldn't be rebuilt. Some distances are necessary for healing. Emma exploded through their apartment door that evening, backpack flying, chattering about butterflies in science class and pizza day in the cafeteria. Ordinary 8-year-old concerns that filled Sarah with quiet joy. No mention of missing grandparents or broken family ties, no shadow of trauma hanging over their dinner conversation. They'd built something new together, just the two of them, and it was surprisingly solid. Sarah helped Emma with math homework at their kitchen table, the same table where she'd once planned family gatherings that included grandparents and aunts and cousins. Now it was just them, but somehow it felt complete, more than complete. Later, tucking Emma into bed, her daughter looked up with serious eyes. "Mom, we're gonna be okay, right? Just us two?" Sarah smoothed Emma's hair and kissed her forehead, breathing in that familiar strawberry shampoo smell. "We're perfect," she said, and meant every word. They'd learned the hardest way possible that family isn't about blood or obligation, it's about showing up when everything falls apart. And they'd shown up for each other when it mattered most.